Hey, I'm doing super well. It's so great to see and hear you. I feel like it's been a while.
It has, and it's so funny because I feel like you get shouted out all the time on the pod, so it's only appropriate that you get to be on here again with us.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
like
I can get Terry on here too.
I'm sorry?
I said,
That would be cool. That would
oh,
be, yeah, I'm sure we'll interact
oh
soon
yeah,
or one day.
I can make that happen. I just thought about that. I don't know why. We could maybe even ask her about that Lazarus thing that we're going to get into. But anyway, for the listeners, I just wanted to say, today we have a special guest. Iggy's back. He is one of my favorite. Last time he was on, we kind of talked about crypto as well as the qigong.
Yeah,
But today we're going to kind of get into his most recent experiences. You've been kind of jet setting across the whole world, which is so awesome. You were in Hong
yeah,
Kong, then you were back in Austin, right? Then New
right.
York, then Mexico. So
Yeah, just
Lord have
been
mercy.
just been moving around.
And in the midst of all that travel, obviously you've been doing a lot of the crypto stuff because that's just been the season for it.
Right.
But you've kind of been doing some really incredible spiritual work while you've been out.
Yeah, I've always wanted to visit kind of like the mother of all like ancient Eastern philosophy, and Hong Kong is the closest I've gotten to China. And so I kind of got a taste of what it's like over there, and it's very prevalent. You know, um, the I more among like the older folk, they do focus more on like daily practice of health and cultivation of their energy. And I think on the second day, I went to this park. I was staying in Sim Cha Choi, and this park around there was beautiful. And it had turtles, it had ponds, it had big trees um, that were massive, and each one was like unique in its own shape. And there were quite a few elderly folks doing their qigong, doing their meditative stuff. I saw more people around my age as well, doing their own thing and their peace and quiet. And to just sit there with my bare feet and take in the sunlight and the earth beneath me, and to just do my cultivation was just nice to do in that part of the world where it's where it all came from. Yeah, I was in Hong Kong for about 10 days, mostly for work. I went to Austin also for work, um, but I did end up taking like a personal vacation in Tulum, which is very full of just indigenous culture, and I think a lot of it is well preserved. Obviously, it is getting more developed for live there and live that kind of lavish sort of luxurious lifestyle. But I think a good amount of the Mayan culture is preserved, and I spent a lot of time at this place in Tulum called Holistica, and I actually met the owner. He was in New York during like the Wall Street crash of 2008. He bought a plot of land in 2010, and he decided to just uh, build um, like beautiful stone temple like structures where people could just meditate, pray, do whatever activities they want that were spiritual. And he was like, "This is cool. I'm gonna build another one. I'm gonna build another structure." And then it then ended up being kind of like a resort with a hotel, with pools, with vegan. I feel like I'm advertising the place, but
But
it
no,
was
we love
cool.
that. I mean,
It
like if
was
you
like
had a
a,
nice life,
it was kind of like it was like a wellness theme park in a way.
that's
Um,
so awesome.
so spent a lot of time there. You see a whole chalkboard of things throughout the day: breath work, stretching, sound stuff, all day. And so I did spend a lot of time there. And there's all different types of folk that stop by. Um, usually tourists that wants to experience that like woo woo, to look more cultured and spiritual type of lifestyle, and explore that, be tourists in that area. There are some who are really curious and and want to go deep and explore and kind of like um, you know tap into their deepest inner spirit voice and address certain parts of them that may hold them back in
Mm-hmm.
life and just grow as people and use it to improve their lives and improve their relationships and the world around them. Um, you know, and I would say those are kind of like the two main categories that of that demographic. Not to generalize, but
No, well,
to simplify.
I feel like in spirituality, more often than not, if you're super into spirituality and you do it all the time, people will kind of shame those places because it's almost like, oh, well, if you really were doing it, you'd be on a Tibetan mountain or whatever, or there wouldn't be vegan options everywhere. It's like, or, but then there's also people who have zero really intention of walking that path and then get a taste for it at places like that, and then that sort of seeds out future behavior patterns that are really beautiful. So I think there's a world of wealth for places like that. I would hate to see people like look down on that just because it's not, you know, largely challenging.
Yeah. I think that obviously there are good teachers who intend to do good, and those are typically the people that I happen to encounter. But I am aware that some are trying to just cash in and take a few workshops from like someone established and respected, and then pretend that they're a teacher and charge a lot of money for to people who don't know better. And so I know that happens. Have not really experienced it firsthand, but I'm just aware that it's like that. And some people will do these like mushroom circle retreats or whatever, and as like tourists, they want to be entertained. They want to see like, oh, is this will I experience magic? Will I become blah blah blah? And will I experience full body orgasms day and night? For the rest of my life. I don't know. So it's just some people that they come and they just want to like see something happen,
Yeah.
and aren't really there to kind of make a real change in their lifestyle for the long term. Because I think how you go about your day is like how you go about your life, and 3 days can do a lot, but it's kind of what you do after makes a difference, right? The choices you make.
And the intention when you go in, because you're like, okay, am I miserable? Do I need a break? Like, what's going on? Or are they like, oh, I'm like high on the hog. Like, I'm really happy and I'm just here to have a good time. Like, that definitely will give different spiritual experiences, no doubt.
Yeah, and it's up to you what you take away and apply. Like you might see something like I attended a workshop from Sasha Cobra involving energy work. Shout outs to her. And I came away with some understanding of how my energy communicates, whether I want to or not, by standing, but or by sitting next to someone. You can actually, if you really tune in, if you're really sensitive to them, you can kind of pick up where they're at in life, um, just by proximity,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
and just real sensitive tuning in to what's going on with them, and it's around the clock type of thing, right? Do you have a question?
I want to ask you about something, but I'm going to edit around this real fast. I think there's a, my cats are doing some stupid shit.
No problem.
And I think I solved my microphone issue.
Yay! I do hear you
You hear
better.
me better?
I do.
Yay. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to edit. I keep saying that word so it'll I can search it later. Yay. Okay. So, what you just mentioned when you said, okay, everyone's got this kind of vibe and you can feel it from people for sure. That type of thing. So, like, I remember one time you told me in a private conversation that when you do qigong a lot and when you basically are in practice a ton, you like everything is super heightened and your attunement to people, even like walking the streets of New York City, is very different. Did you feel that leaving the experiences from Tulum?
Yeah, actually, It was certainly more potent during like the 3 days of the workshop, but I did come away with a sensitivity to like my awareness of my body, and like I'm a very heady, brainy, thoughty person. Thought with a GH, right?
Thanks
And
for clarifying.
yeah, and you know when I like I'll certainly catch myself more often when I cannot feel like my feet on the ground or my hands on the table, and then just you know get myself to come back more. And I notice more when people are also up in their head because they I see the same things I do, right? It's more easily noticeable. So if it helps me like improve how I help my friends with their relationships and how to get them more present. Like I had coffee with a friend recently, and she was kind of going off about like, oh, like I don't know if it's gonna work with this guy, and I'm over here, but I'm gonna travel a lot. He can't travel, and I don't know. Should I do polyamory? And uh, even though it didn't work the two times before when I
No.
tried, so I don't know, and I see the brain just going like this, and I'm like, yeah, I see myself in this, right? And I try to do what I can to help, and it's just being more present, being more in my breath,
How
and
do you do that when you watch like a friend spinning out and then you're like how do you intercede and say, I realize that what you're feeling right now is very important, but like let's just feel the table for a second. Like what do you do in that scenario?
yeah, I mean, like this is a friend that I've known for like a year and a half. I'm not trying to like coach everybody I meet necessarily, but something like ideally if if I'm present, that like it'll be contagious, just in the same way that if I came into this conversation and I was angry, like you would feel the anger, like it would be contagious to you, like you would sense a tension, right? But I think there's a flip side to that where if I'm feeling super peaceful and full of repose and in a complete wave of serenity, that you would kind of ride that wave too eventually, because there's no choice, right? You'd have to exit the conversation in order to not ride that with me. So, ideally she picks up on it. It did come to a point where I did ask her, like, do you feel your feet on the floor?
Ah!
Just take a second. Do you take, you know, do you just feel your body right now?
And then you're like, do you need a Xanax? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. And I just try to just put a little feeler out there and just ask her and gauge her level of awareness. And I did ask, like, do you feel your hands on the table right now? And 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 her answer was like, I think
No.
so. I think so. How do you think whether you feel it? I was like, okay, that was probably the most heady answer possible.
As she like looks up to
Yeah.
consider.
Um. So you know, I just took a second and asked her to breathe, and and for a moment, like I sensed the mind tend to slow down a little bit. The eyes were moving a little bit, like what's going on here? Because I could tell her mind wasn't really approving of this exit
No.
of the thought process. But and then we just kept breathing for like 5-10 minutes, and we got to really sink down to a level of like stability and comfort, and like less of a need to fill the the space in the cafe with our words, and became kind of just us, just chilling, just breathing and chilling, like as though everything were okay and will be,
Correct.
right?
Right. Well,
um
two
yeah.
things that I think are really valuable out of that conversation that I just want to like shout out real fast. The first thing is like some of the rules that I believe in about energy transfer, because it's not quite it emulates in my world the law of I want to say condensation, but it's not. It's where like hot and air
Con-
will No, but it's like where if you walk into a room in the hot air and the cool air, eventually you'll stabilize in the middle, right? But
Yeah.
it's not that easy with personal energy because you're never typically coming to the table one to one. Because we know those people where they may have not eaten that day, maybe their family just sent them this crazy text message and their energy is just lower and it's lower producing. And so, say it goes in the room with a gentle nature, and then you've just got this other person who just ate, had the greatest morning ever, their kids made them happy and all this. So they're just fueled to the brim of energy. They meet in a room and they're just going to pretty much dominate. And they're in like that other energy. The rule is that you do, if you're sharing, if you don't have any guards up, it will attempt to have its role. But again, stronger energy over not, it's going to be what it is. And I would imagine that you have, if she's pretty ungrounded and you've just come back from the most grounding experience ever, your energy is going to be a lot more bold. So I'm really glad that you were able to help her with that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And that's kind of like why I learned this stuff, just so I can help people, with just love and kindness and gentleness. I'm not trying to like fix people, right?
True.
Also,
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes I'm just trying to hang too. And
Yeah. Well, honestly, I love for as wise as I legitimately feel that you are, you're one of the few people that I really do feel you're like live and let live as much as possible until it starts to annoy me. I
yeah,
think that's fair.
yeah, for
That's
sure.
kind of alpha energy. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you.
You're like, I'm fixing this for me, not for you.
Yeah, yeah, and at some point it's like, all right, we're either going to address this, or I'll, this will be uncomfortable the rest of the way.
That's
Type
really,
thing.
really fair.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned, talking kind of about like the chaotic energy around the head. So
Mm,
whenever I was training with Terry, the way that I went to ask her, because she does these channeling classes where everybody is pretty untrained and they're just following her lead. I said, what do you most often see when people start trying to get into a meditative state? And the way that I was taught and the way that she teaches meditation is basically like from the crown, imagine like gold coming out and falling down like a fountain around you. And she said more often than not, it almost looks like, those candles that you get with in a nice restaurant with your birthday, like a sparkler. She
yes.
said basically it looks like that for a second because people are so that, and I could see that in my head. And I was like, oh my God. And so even for me, I can tell when I'm still like a lit sparkler and I can feel when it starts to just flow. And sometimes that takes a minute. Like it's not an easy process to make that energy consolidate and then become smooth. That's not for the faint of heart.
Like, what was day one like?
For
Were
me,
Yeah, were you just following the advice without questioning?
I was literally with my eyes closed, being like, I hope I'm doing this right. And while she's talking through a meditation, because before her, I'd attempted some meditations just off of YouTube, but never with someone like watching me and never with a task at the other end of it. Because the first class that we ever did was perceptions. And that's basically where there's something on the table and she asks you to go into a meditative state and then envision yourself moving that energy somewhere else. So taking I think it was a stone or something. No, it was crayons off the table. And I'm just sitting there being like, we're all batshit crazy. Like, she's crazy. I'm crazy for trying this. I'm not meditating because all I'm doing is being anxious. And then she just kind of was like, do you still have to do it? I was like, okay. But what about you? What was your first meditation experience like, if you
Meditate.
can remember?
Wow. I really don't remember the first time I meditated intentionally, but I remember like at some point buying a meditation app and trying out those like 5, 10 minute meditations. Um, or maybe it was like before that. I think around when I got into crypto, I started attending, like, for whatever reason, the like I would go to a conference and Deepak Chopra would lead a meditation, and I would just kind of intersect with this whole other world of mindfulness. And so I think you know I was pretty open minded then. So okay, sit and be quiet, and all I got to do is like pay attention to my feet, pay attention to my knees, my shoulders, all these things. This is cool. And then I would just kind of get into a deep, quiet, black, dark space where everything is comfortable and I'm super aware. And it was kind of like sleep, but I'm totally awake. I'm not drowsy, and my mind would go really still. So I kind of saw it as like, yeah, this is pretty legit. And I think I bought the app after to kind of try out these 5 minute meditations that would um, kind of clean up my mind and better align me towards having a good day. And I think, yeah, I actually in the company office that I worked at the time in 2018, I actually had for like a few weeks we would like our whole office would sit in a circle and like do a 5 minute meditation. And
I
I would
love
share with them,
that.
hey, it's 1 o'clock. Let's just sit for 5 minutes and meditate, see what happens. And they would tell me like, oh my god, I killed it. I handled this, I did that, I accomplished this, I did so many things, I checked off so many boxes after that thing. So I did see the benefits to answer your question.
Well, and I wonder too, like, I love what you just said because you said kind of clean up my mind. And for some reason in my head, I just saw like, you know how you know someone might be coming over, but it's a little bit unexpected, so you're just mad dashing through your place.
Mm,
And it does look better when you're done. Like there's no shame in that game. And I wonder if that's kind of the effect of maybe like a 5 minute meditation where it's like, all right, I can't go to the upper worlds in this, like it's 5 minutes,
sure.
but I can definitely clean up a little bit.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It actually does make a huge difference. Anywhere from like the 5 to 30 minute range, I would say like it really does help you realign your day, maybe even your week, maybe even your month. It can deal with a lot, and it's in my opinion when you hit like the hour or 2 hour mark, if you're doing some type of meditation or qigong, that's when you kind of you get to view like a top down view of your life and what kindness and love really is from just like a higher perspective than like your like mortal human eyes.
The experience of it.
Yeah. So,
All this
but
makes me feel is I should meditate more.
I mean, right. You know, I think everyone should kind of quiet their mind and take a second to feel what's going on. And obviously, it's easier said than done. It's definitely a choice you make every single day, and that's life.
True. Well, I'm curious about so whenever you are in these because you did remind me again about the where it was very smoky, that experience, and I know I want you to be able to share a little bit of that because I don't know anything about that.
Which smoky thing?
Where it
Sorry.
was like this like you said that it just like it was just a place that you could go and you would like work and stuff, but everything kind of smelled like these leaves that were burning. Do I
Mm,
have that mixed up? No, you're good. It was in Tulum.
in Tulum. Honestly, that was everywhere. A lot of places
Okay.
had copal, and copal is like this tree sap that often like the Mayan shamans would use to. They put it in this stone bowl. They would light it on fire, and it's smoke, and it's got such a clean smell to it, and very perfume like. And they just kind of wave that like under your limbs, over your head, like by your ankles.
Oh, yeah, as a protection.
Yeah, as a cleansing of vibes type thing. That like
Yes.
that they'll be burning that at like a restaurant. They'll be burning it at a cafe. Like that's
Wow.
how they work. That's but they kind of derived from the Temazcal ceremonies that they would do, and the
And what are
Temazcal
those?
the Temazcal is kind of like a sweat lodge where you're inside this dome. There's a pit in the middle, and they're shoveling burning rocks into it, and the shaman brings in buckets of water with tea leaves in them, like rosemary or chamomile, and then they pour the water over the burning rocks and creates this steam that permeates the little space. And the steam is not just like a water bath house type thing. It's got the smell of the leaves. It
Mm-hmm.
smells like medicine. It opens up your pores. It purifies your skin. It's definitely very hot and tests physical endurance for sure, and you're in this dark room. Um, but you can really go deep into any kind of meditative space you want. Um, Most of the time, I'm just trying to like stay alive and
Yeah.
endure the heat. But some
You're
people,
like, I'm too much in my body. I feel
yeah,
everything.
I'm like trying to make sure I get through this thing alive. That's kind of always how it is for me. But some people will have some type, and everyone's sober, obviously, or maybe not obviously. We are. Um, so some people sometimes see things. Sometimes they go really really deeply inward and address certain things in their lives, or all types of psychedelic stuff happens. For me, I like doing it because it's really good for my skin. It clears out all my pores. It tests my mental endurance, and I get to kind of sit and be aware of my breath in like a physically intense situation. And it feels great coming out of there and like drinking like a fresh cup of water and just feeling like, oh man, I got through so much physical endurance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, um, there was this specific shaman named Michi, and such a good guy, such a nice dude. The way I like why I like his the most is that he lets everyone state their intention going in, and they can vary from, oh, I want to feel an attuned love with myself, or I want to heal this and that, or I want to improve my relationship with this and that. He lets you pick, like, choose your own adventure. And I think, as we know, intention is everything, right? So letting everyone voice their intention kind of steers us on the right path. And I really think that calling something into the air, like I want this, I want that, it unconsciously like gears you, puts you on a track towards what you want, with boundaries that tend to guard you from things that you don't want, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love that. I mentioned my intention was to just honor God, and he liked that. I could tell he kind of responded to it in the end, where he mentioned that the Mayan people, the term Mayan wasn't just Maya was not just a term for an indigenous people. They actually call Maya as a person with no discord, kind of like Christ or Buddha. And I thought that was like super cool, because I want to believe that everyone around the world has their own experience with God, or Christ even. And so the fact that they had like their own term for this was really really beautiful to me. So yeah.
Well, I have so with that idea, the concept of the Maya being, a person without discord, a person without inner conflict. And so then thus too meaning they probably have limited conflict outside of themselves as well. But I was just listening to this thing and it was talking about the brain waves, right? And how like delta is a certain experience for people, alpha is a certain experience. But now with everybody kind of the world itself accepting that Hertz frequencies are kind of running everything. Like right now they're talking about maybe redoing the periodic table to be more appropriate to the frequency that it because it doesn't it actually like looks like a spiral. It's so weird. But anyways, talking about how some of the peaks of the Tibetan mountains, just because of the way that energy reverberates there, it's like 7.6 hertz, which is like right in the area for theta brain waves, which is a precursor to DMT, natural DMT. So it's curious to me because just by this like fluke, say it's not a frequency thing, say it's a spiritual thing, right? Like and in certain regions of Latin America, that's obviously very prevalent. There's a ton of ley lines that cut through there that have been honored. We know that, and even like the Tibetan mountain thing. So I wonder sometimes, is it a stroke of luck sometimes whether or not someone winds up on this like spiritual pathway just based on region, sort of like your religion is kind of decided by the region that you're born in for the
Mm,
most part until later in life.
that's a really good question. I mean, you would know the answer to this more than me. I think that we're all kind of seeking something, and whether we're conscious about it or not, we tend to fall into place with, in the right environment, with access to whatever belief system or practices that, you know, that are meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's all I can really say. I'd have to think about that a little more. Do you have any thoughts about it?
If that's true, it feels a little bit I don't want to say unfair, but like if you're born in Dallas, Texas, right, and you're like, oh, I want to go be spiritual, like if the cheat code is being in Tulum or being in Chichen Itza or being in Tibet, and you're like struggling to get into that theta zone, and then they just walk out their door and they are, I feel a little bit like, dang, that's an advantage that I don't have. Not that I couldn't go seek that, you know what I mean? But I think it's just like, I mean, unfortunately, it's just like IQ. It's like, what did your mom eat when you were being made? Like, what was her DNA background? So there's definitely advantages and disadvantages, but I think it would be really wild to dismiss that there's potentially a regional relationship, especially when you look at Sedona, right? I mean, like the crunchy granola hippies were there long before it really became mainstream. And that's the place where you have the vortexes that the trees grow spirally. So
Yeah.
there's something going on that's metaphysical there, and it's impacted the collective.
This is why I like Lao Tzu a lot, because whether he's like a real person or not, like 500 BC, uh, a Chinese man looks inward enough and just meditates and introspects for as long as he did, and comes up with like this really, really intangible um, and paradoxical concept of God. And he had no knowledge of other monotheistic religions. Like there was no, or as far as we know, like no exposure to Judaism or like the Hebrew people back then. But he knew that there was this force of nature that governs all things, and it it doesn't it doesn't do it by force. It doesn't give orders to anything, and all celestial beings follow it. It's
Mm,
natural order.
yes.
It doesn't it doesn't struggle, but yet it overcomes anyway. It's not the outer circle of the wheel. It's that space in between that it adheres to. And he just goes, I don't know what to call it. I'll just call it the Tao. But it's not. That's not what it is. But I'm just gonna put like a sticker on it so we know what I'm talking about. And it gets the term Tao gets compared a lot with the term logos, which is like
Mm-hmm.
Greeks would use to describe like Christ as the Word of God. And so I really like the Asian spin on it, the Chinese spin on it, which is more kind of like naturalistic in a way. So he didn't know about nothing, but he looked entirely inward to discover like there's this thing, there's this Tao, and it existed before existence or non-existence. It was before even that. And I think it's in like the 21st book of the Tao Te Ching. He writes, "How do I know this to be true? I looked inside myself and I saw it." So wherever he was, he found it here, like inward.
Well, I think that's so accurate. And I mean, we've talked about this privately, but before I really got into understanding spirituality and training, I didn't believe in any of this. I was very, very nihilistic, very atheistic. I didn't understand. I'd read all about the different versions of God that could be, whether it was the clock starter or the creator that walked away, or like someone who's like listening when we pray for our pets to be healthy. Like, which one is it? Is what I was like, there's too many versions of it, maybe that don't make sense to me. But then you have these innumerable and inalienable truths of energy. Like I don't know. There are guides with every soul. Who did that? Who organizes that no matter what you have two? I don't know, but I know I see it every time. So And so then, when you say the Tao, it almost is like these are the rules, right? Like this is how it works. This is how energy transfers. This is why pining after somebody could actually have negative effects on their decisions themselves, even if you never meet. That's why stalkers are so dangerous. Not even in the physical form, but energetically, they drain you. So like all these things are true, and they seem to be true no matter who it's happening to, which means we're all beheld or not beheld. That sounds almost, we're all ingratiated with these laws. And the scary part to me, because I already know I don't know all of them, is they don't care whether we know about them or not. Like, so ignorance of them is still guilt, and not that they're punitive per se, but they definitely are reflective, it seems to be, of what you sow has a tendency to be what you gain, and not out of a punitive perspective, but because you're just locked into your own frequency vibrational stages. Like you can't go rob somebody and then have high abundance. Like you're in the same pool as all the other people who rob other people.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
them's the rules.
The same rule set. Would you say though that maybe some people get punished more than others?
The
Like,
more I study astrology, the more I am seeing that I feel we spin a dial and we acknowledge a starting point, and that might have some relationship with karma, with clearing things that have happened spiritually before. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a weird thing to try to get into, but I'm going to go quick. So there's certain placements that are just very challenging. For instance, there's a thing called a grand cross, right? And to have that is to basically say that in the majority of the major quadrants of your existence, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be misunderstandings, and there's going to be, um, you know, conflict. So that seems to be pretty built into your birth, right? And I believe that that might be, at least from the non-contractual perspective, of clearing karma, where you're like, all right, I had a really, really gifted life. I took advantage of a lot of people. This is going to be sort of what the frequency of my past life allows. It's almost like boarding an airplane. And like your frequency from a past life, it does have a tendency to place you in which boarding zone. I think there might be, I don't know how conscious that decision is. Whereas I do feel that there are certain contracts that I think are much more intelligent, that says, well, I murked Iggy last lifetime. The fastest way to knock this out, I could just go into a wartime state, but then I'd probably accrue more karma there than I would get rid of. So let's just have Iggy take this out, and then we contract that, and that's sort of a thing. Because and that's significantly more intelligent than I feel the star alignment could be. I think that's more maybe a frequency thing. Um, but even that is a guide of rules as well, because, have you ever played those games where, like online or whatever, where like you step into a room and there's either a gate or like a force field? You have to get into the room and then hit buttons over here, and then one door drops. It's like,
yeah,
that's also some of the rule systems, I believe, where if it's not really your time to be like coming into union with your person, like no matter what you try, those force fields are kind of in place until it's time. And
mm,
you can either accept that or rail against it, or go find hookers, or go like marry the first person you meet. You know what I mean? Like people do really crazy things when they want something and they see the world isn't giving it to them. But sometimes there really is a timing aspect, a la the stars, perhaps. I don't really know yet how I feel about that. But there definitely is enough evidence to make me curious, and I think it works that way as well. So we have all these like weird laws, quote unquote, that are sort of playing a heavy hand in our life. Call it God, call it Tao, call it predestination. Um, but man, it's like that. It's as real as I feel this table is.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
So
so in cardology, like there's this concept of karma cards, and so that it just means that there's one card where like if that's someone's birth card, they're here more to like help you than you help them. And the other one is like if you meet someone with this card, like you're kind of here to help them more than they help you. whether you owe someone or they owe whatever, I don't know. But I think it's like an interesting way to look at certain relationships where they're not always like symbiotic. Sometimes there's like an imbalance. And so, like, there are people that I can tell like they ask a bit from me, and like some days like I don't always have like the bandwidth or the time. I just know, okay, this will be a 2 hour conversation. I'll be helping them, and I may not get as much back, but I kind of chalk that to someone's doing that for me. I know that people have given way more to me than I have of them, and that might just be how it is. So it's kind of like just pay your dues type of thing. Like I think my stepdad is a karma card of mine where he's meant to like help me, and like he met my mom when I was 7, married my mother, paid for the house that we live in, and like sent me to college, and he's been like a really really good man in my life. Being a stepdad it's like a big undertaking. You're taking in someone like you didn't conceive him, you didn't you didn't hold him as a baby, you kind of missed out on quite a bit. You're like playing like a halfway saved game, like back to the game metaphor. But he took that on out of like complete love for me and my mother. It kind of teaches me that if someone needs me, like I should always answer to the call, because I would want that to happen to me if I needed someone, and it has happened when I needed someone. So I should always
Mm-hmm.
try to balance that out. You know what I mean?
True. It is kind of curious. So what are in the cardology specifically, what karma cards, what do they sort of look like for people?
Um, that's a good question. So, um, basically, if you have a karma card, like there's one that like if it's their birth card, that means that they're in your life to kind of help you more than you help them. Maybe
Mm.
it's past stuff, or maybe that's just like what they're assigned to do. And then there's another card for like if you encounter this birth card, you're here to help them more than they
Ooh.
help you. So you gotta like respect both and understand. Like it's kind of a good way to like appreciate all types of relationships that have different dynamics. And
Weird. I just thought of this person I know,
yeah.
and the moment I laid eyes on them, I felt a significant urge to like bring them into my fold, which I'm not that way at all.
Mm,
And then I wound up feeling very beholden to making sure they were okay for a very long time until I felt that it was starting to become unhealthy. But it's weird because now I wonder, like I've always asked myself, how did I get into this position to helping this person? It's never made sense. And then I just chalked it up to like a past life thing. But I wonder if it's karma card where it's like maybe I never knew her, but I was like, oh, I'm supposed to help you. Cool, cool, cool. I got you.
yeah, I mean, it's also a pleasant way to look at things, right? Given that what you were speaking earlier about the contracts and the choosing, like where you're born type of stuff, maybe some of like it goes deeper, and it can fall into like the relationships that you have, and maybe like there's a rolodex of people that you're assigned to deal with a certain way, or encounter under a certain context. Who knows?
Well, in numerology when they talk about the pinnacles, and it's weird to me because they all, and this is in Chinese astrology too. So like these same age ranges do repeat. And it's like they all kind of stop around 4750-ish, or like maybe I don't know, not stop maybe, but I always wonder if you make it there, are you just like good and you can go actually like have fun? Like is all the planning stuff kind of done? Because like why do the Chinese astrology kind of stop labeling ages at like periods of time after a certain point, or like pinnacles kind of have this like allegedly like huge role to play, so to speak, until a certain age. And then I look at Terry and she met her twin flame after that age. Like I'm just like, dang, is that when it's like, okay, all bets are off, go have fun, just don't get more karma?
Um,
Like that'd be kind of dope. I don't think it works that way probably, but that would be
no,
cool.
I would say that like I learned a lot of lessons in my. I don't know. I kind of want to say that like I'm 35 years old. I probably learned more lessons up until now than I will from 35 to 70, but that might not even be correct. But maybe there's some big lessons in life that maybe I tackle earlier on or
Hmm.
much earlier on, and like as we age, it becomes more of like a retirement type of thing where it's just chill, mentor, relax. You did
Or we
most
do
of the
it
stuff.
poorly.
Yeah.
Like, what if we do it bad? Like, you know what I mean? What if we're like, we've been mean to other people forever and like we've done dumb stuff, and now we're like, okay, this is the most prime opportunity to clean it up because there's nothing else left for me to work on, really.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I couldn't tell, but I find it beautiful though that Terry had this love story at this point in her life, and I think that's the type of story that we don't hear enough. Like, why does it always have to be like we met when we were both 18 and we ran away, uh,
Yeah.
and then started a family and we were in love for the rest for happily ever after type of thing. Like, there's not enough stories of like finding that love later, and I think
Yeah.
those can be really interesting and deep as well because you've you've lived you've lived a life lived a lot and you've learned many lessons and you think that you've been through everything and you know everything or know a lot and to come across someone that completely flips it upside down when you think that you know nothing will kind of blow your mind or blow your life wide open anymore, but it does. I think there should be more stories of that.
You know what's weird is I was watching your hands move just now,
Hmm.
and I just felt that there was like a regality or like a royalty almost about your gestures. It's very interesting.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, but it felt like it. I mean, it was connecting to something. So that's interesting.
Thank you. Thanks a
Um,
lot.
what do you think about like when you're at the because I perceive you as spiritually advanced. There's not very many people I've ever met in my life who have done hours upon hours of qigong or any metaphysical practice. Um, and I think that makes you rare. I think that makes me rare. I think that makes Terry rare. There's just not a lot of people who are going to dedicate that much time to not moving or doing or trying to see something that's not there when it doesn't pay you. You know what I mean? Like these are so but when you go and you have these experiences and they're shared with other people, because just like we said, kind of the reason or season people, um, what would you advise somebody if they were wanting to go and like set their vacation around a spiritual experience, whether it's like one of those silent retreats or like a water retreat or whatever it would be? What would your advice be since you've done quite a few of these like spiritually active engagements?
Right. I think intention is everything, and like you got to be really honest about it, and it's got to feel good when you say it. As with anything, um, but having like a concrete, I want, I am looking for this, and I'm looking for it this way, and and it's got to sound true. It's got to ring true, like to you, and it can't just sound nice. It's gotta be it's gotta speak to the depth of you, and the deeper you go as you figure that out, the easier it'll be for you. Because if you're just there to be entertained, but you're pretending that it's to like be so eye opening and to be so enlightened, then you might be disappointed, or
Mm,
you know what I mean, or you might be misled even. So I think intention is everything, and just be real with your expectations, and if you search deep in yourself and you really find out, oh yeah, I think I really just want to like go on a roller coaster and that's it, then then you should assess if it's worth paying all this money to fly somewhere and do that. Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
Well, I always say this too, and I caution people about this, is that when you do say you have a legit, you go to have a legitimate experience, and then you do have a legitimate experience, there is the very real repercussion that you come into knowingness that your existence, right? Your house or where you live, your relationship, your job is not really in alignment with what you've just found out about yourself. But the reality is, in order to remain safe and stable as a human being in this world, you can't really just go home and say, I'm going to just give everything away and move and in my marriage and my kids are going to be super confused, like all these things that really are like, you probably feel them so strongly in that moment. But is that really helpful for you to do all those things? Does that bring you closer into alignment with your path? Probably not. In fact, you're kind of just jumping off of the path entirely.
It's just escapism.
Or fear. It's like, oh, am I going to live this life forever if I stay here? Because some of those insights are like some people have really lived outside of who they think they are or who they thought they were. So, there's temperance to those experiences where you say, all right, I have a crazy experience. I just realized like maybe my work is not for me. Maybe my marriage is not for me. Da da da. But like, how am I going to do that in a tempered, metered fashion to get closer to alignment without what Terry calls seam ripping, without seam ripping away everything that you've built? Like we can't be unrealistic with the human side. And if you've spent, 30 years building this life and then you have one ayahuasca retreat, I just, even if you know in your heart that that is the path that you need to distance what you've built, be mindful that you don't just tank yourself into a hole that you can't recover from. Because I doubt if you went back and did an ayahuasca retreat then that they would say, oh, yeah, you did it. You're in alignment. Nailed it. You're like, no, I've completely lost myself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there was this painter named Gauguin. I can't pronounce the names, but I think he had like a successful life, I think in business or something like that, married with kids. And then later in his life, he said, I want to be if I remember correctly, he did kind of leave his family to go become a painter. And he ended up making some really good stuff that, that I visit at the Museum of Modern Art sometimes. And I think about it, like he ended up making some good stuff and he had a mark in artistic history. At what cost, though? I don't know. I don't know if it was worth it or not, but it seemed that he did follow through with what he wanted to do. Yeah.
Ooh, well, that brings up a really good point. So right now there's this huge kind of epidemic. I don't know, in Japan. Have you heard about this? The disappearing?
Mm,
Oh
no.
my gosh. So now they were like, I mean, it's profitable, but basically there are these, it's essentially legal ways to completely destroy your identity. And they're not really giving you a new one, I don't believe. It's not like but they're disappearing you entirely. And like fathers are doing this, wives are doing this. Like they're just completely erasing they're basically going off the grid. And these, these are services that you can go and have done for you basically. And I just want to speak on that because, you can't I didn't think this was possible, but I actually know somebody who uh Terry told me, she was like, you keep very interesting company because this individual has had several recent past lives that just don't count.
Just don't count. What does that mean?
Like nothing, like they would, somebody went so far off of their path or basically said, I don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
this, that they didn't honor any of their contracts and they didn't really do much of any of the work. So like, that's, I mean, and that makes me think of the people who like would escape to just disappear and like leave their relationships behind. So
Mm-hmm.
there is an argument to be made that like if all that really gets logged on our soul is how we handle and treat other people, and say like we just don't engage with other people at all, theoretically, like maybe we get some good grace with like the nature sprites, like, I don't know exactly, but like there are parts of that where we have responsibilities, we have to work through stuff here, like that's why we're doing it, unfortunately or fortunately. um and so for me, and knowing this person's personality, they're like so willing to quit pretty much a lot of things, or like they're so willing to walk away from things, and it just doesn't really occur to them that that would be negative. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh man, that's in your, that I can still see that. I can still see versions of that in you today.
yeah,
And she actually wound up, she did some training, and then Terry said, yeah, she won't stay with this. So, you know what I mean? It's like, even there, who knows what that was for? Or maybe that was like supposed to remind her that this was where she was supposed to go. And she was like, I'm good, thanks.
yeah. I think that is kind of like the darker side of what you're saying. You don't want to abandon all responsibility and everything that you built on a whim, but also if you feel stuck, I guess, in like a life that maybe you thought you wanted and you really feel it's like maybe not the path. I think you got to gauge whether you're escaping responsibility or you're ready to kind of let
Turn
go
the
of
page.
something that doesn't really serve you or something. So, you just got to gauge that.
Well, and the most complicated part is it's very rarely fully one or fully the other. Like, I would bet you most times it's partly you made decisions that weren't in alignment with your soul, and part of it is like I really love what I've built, but I'm exhausted with it, ready to go. Like it's God. It's never. I wish it was that easy, but I will say this. I don't. For me, and we've talked about this. I was in such survival mode for so long. So I would argue that really only until 2019, up or the beginning of 2019, was the beginning of me living intentionally. Like up to that point, up to 2019, everything was survival, everything was the ego. If I got my feelings hurt, I was going to figure out a way to hurt your feelings twice over, whether it was coming from me or not. Like there was just this weird, like, I'm going to get my pound of flesh, but I'm just trying to survive also, which made me the perfect person to play victim because I wouldn't acknowledge, oh, yeah, no, I'm getting my pound of flesh. I would just be like, oh, the world is hard to little old me. You're like, no, no, you're a warrior out there fighting too. Like, and so 2019 was when I would be very shocked if I woke up one day from 2019 to now and was like wildly disappointed or wildly unfulfilled with my life. Only because I do feel that I've been pretty like, is this what I need? Is this what I want? But we also recognize that people don't do that all the time. So what if that moment starts when they're 35 or 38 or 42?
Right.
Then you do have a huge backlog of like, I have a whole life. Like at least
Mhm.
I was in 2019, I was 26. No, that was way 4, 6. I was 20. I'm so bad at math. I'm 29 now. It would have been like 24, 28. Yeah, around 23, 24. That's nuts. Oh my God, I was so young. In my head, I remember that like it was like last week. That's crazy. Okay, well then, yeah, then that, but definitely 29 because I started going to therapy, and
Yeah.
that changed everything. But like, imagine if you're 50 and you've got grandbabies and you've got retirement and you've got shared 401ks. Oh my God, I just can't imagine. Like, what do you do? So I say
Yeah.
that to say it in that scenario, it makes me understand the disappearing act more because there's so much there. Like I have empathy for it. Do I think it's the right thing to do? No. Do I think there's a little bit of like lack of accountability, which is probably what got you there in the first place? Yeah. But do I understand it a lot? Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I don't think that we're always. I think it's like a very edge case where you have to like drop everything in life and pursue like one thing. Like I've been a poet, I've been a bankruptcy law consultant, been a digital marketer, I've been a crypto dude. Now I'm getting into like meditative practices and kind of like revisiting Christianity in a way different light than decades ago. So I think I think we're meant to kind of evolve and go through these like drastic different phases and stuff, but also like pick up little learnings and gems that still retain. It's not like I am this for these 4 years, but now I'm this, now I'm this. no, I think there's a compounding effect to it, if
I
that makes sense.
agree. I think this is kind of a scary thought form, but like I do believe that our souls have a certain tonality to them. And that's funny because I wasn't about to use that word, but that's the word that just got used. It's
Liking
weird.
liking this. Keep going.
Uh, and that has a tendency to go through multiple lifetimes. So like I kind of got used to this idea, I thought, where it's like, oh, every lifetime is a whole new personality and you're supposed to wear that, but that's not really true. It's like if you have a kind of shy, polite energy, you're going to carry that through each lifetime. So if you have a lifetime where you're supposed to be a CEO, that's going to be one of your crosses to bear because that's not really in your tone. Like that's not really, you're going to, and maybe that's why you're doing it. Like maybe you're trying to stretch and grow that aspect of yourself. But it is interesting because we do have a song that is inherent to our soul that really doesn't, it can be evolved, but it's not the same as like, it's not impacted whether you're coming in as a male this lifetime or a female this lifetime or a victim versus a, you know, it's like, it's just who your soul is. And that those note changes happen so small, like so over lifetimes and lifetimes, not, and I thought it was a little bit more like, oh, you get to go be this whole other avatar. It's not really that way. And I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I really like your train of thought. Yeah,
Well, I thank you. I
I,
don't know that it's entirely like just my own, but I felt led to say that. I want
no,
to speak on something real fast because I wanted to talk about the meditation that I got to be a part of briefly that one night because in your Discord group, Agarthy, oh my God, I just thought that was the most magical gathering of people listening to each other's like desires and manifestation desires and having it be so raw. I just
mm,
wanted to really give you a pat on the back for organizing such a great space.
oh, thanks,
It's
thanks,
like really dope. And I'm
cool.
glad that people are doing that with you.
Yeah, I hope it helps, and yeah, hopefully we do more fulfilling things like that.
Oh, yeah, we will. Listen, I'm going to let you go. We're going to talk about the Lazarus dream whenever Terry's on here with us. And so maybe the next,
Cool
I'll
idea.
see what, we're going to shoot on Tuesday at 10 our time. So maybe I'll see what you're doing and we can maybe have you peek in and be part of it for a second.
Oh, that would be super dope. Yeah, yeah. Even if for a little, that
I'd
would be
love that.
cool
Be like
express.
our little Iggy feature.
Yeah, I love it. And thanks for having me on. You know,
Of course, dude. I
oh,
love you. I think you're amazing. You're one of my people.
thank you. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on, and yeah, maybe we'll catch up again Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Take care and we'll talk soon. Okay, my dear?
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.